So today we'll be taking a look at Jeff Hardy's storyline and if there's any possible love interest developing there. We'll also take a look at why Natalya has fans heated and a new Keith Lee report. Let's start things off with Jeff Hardy and what happened at SmackDown. Jeff Hardy is a big addition for SmackDown and their new era. Everyone assumes that Hardy will play a bigger role on SmackDown in the coming months. But he had a quick backstage segment this week that had fans talking. Jeff Hardy was seen with newly drafted superstar Aaliyah. Not to be confused with Rey Mysterio's daughter, Aaliyah. This is NXT Aaliyah that was just called up to the main roster. So Hardy and Aaliyah were talking before. They were interrupted by a backstage reporter that wanted an interview with Jeff Hardy. Hardy dismissed himself from Aaliyah for the interview, and Aaliyah walks down the hall. Hardy doesn't get to answer any questions from the interview because he looks over and sees Sami Zayn talking to Aaliyah. So Hardy abruptly leaves the interview before it even started and goes to see what Sami Zayn is telling Aaliyah. Sami welcomed Jeff into the conversation and continued to tell Aaliyah about how people always come to him for advice. He tells her that what she's wearing is great, but that she should consider a pantsuit. He tells her to think about it before walking off. Aaliyah asks Hardy if Sami is always like that, and Hardy said, "Yes, welcome to SmackDown." So that was it for Jeff Hardy and Aaliyah. Sami did appear later in the night for a brief interaction with Hit Row, but fans are still trying to comprehend what's going on with Jeff Hardy and Aaliyah. Is that a storyline? Is Aaliyah a possible love interest for Jeff Hardy? Or is it just a meaningless filler backstage segment? That's the problem here. It's very hard to tell at first. Sometimes backstage moments like this could hold heavy significance. Sometimes it can mean absolutely nothing the following week. Sort of like what we saw with Dolph Ziggler and Toni Storm over the summer. WWE wasn't doing anything with Toni Storm back then. But then there was a segment between Ziggler and Toni where it appeared like they were teasing the beginning of some sort of love interest angle there, but there was never any follow-up. So that moment between them turned out to be pointless. So that could be the case here as well, or maybe it does lead to a story. Only next week will tell. If Jeff and Aaliyah were to continue this friendship, partnership, whatever it may be, it does seem like Aaliyah would benefit greatly from it. Aaliyah already had her fan base from what she did in NXT, but there may be some casual WWE viewers out there that don't know much about her. So pairing her up with a beloved and familiar face like Jeff Hardy could potentially get fans to strongly support Aaliyah right from the jump. It's clear that Jeff has to care for her in some way. He could have kept doing his interview and minding his own business, but he saw her talking to Sami Zayn. Everyone knows Sami could say some crazy things. So he stopped the interview and went over there to protect Aaliyah from whatever Sami Zayn was going to say. Clearly, there's some sort of care there from Jeff for the newly drafted main roster rookie, Aaliyah. So when you look at a segment like that, even though it was barely a minute long, you can see how it could be starting a moment there for a story between Jeff Hardy and Aaliyah. Doesn't have to be a love interest story right away. Maybe Jeff Hardy is one of the first friends she made at SmackDown, so she sticks by his side backstage. You could even take it plenty of other directions. Maybe Aaliyah idolized Jeff Hardy growing up, and that's why she gravitates towards him. Maybe Sami Zayn talks to one of the heels in the women's roster and puts them up to taking out Aaliyah, which would then force Jeff Hardy to step up and defend her. Something like that is a possibility for sure, because like we know by now, WWE calls up NXT superstars with absolutely zero plans in mind for them. You can even look at Toni Storm. They hyped up her debut as if they had a big plan for her, and she probably only competed twice on SmackDown since July. So it's not like they have anything else planned for Aaliyah. Not to mention the fact that NXT characters could change when they come over to the main roster. So SmackDown Aaliyah may not be the same as NXT Aaliyah. It is early though. That was Aaliyah's first SmackDown appearance, so we don't know much about her new persona on SmackDown. And of course, we'll have to wait and see if this is actually a story with Jeff Hardy or not. But what are your thoughts on that moment between Jeff Hardy and Aaliyah? Do you think it could be the start of a story? A new report has just recently surfaced about Keith Lee's alleged behavior backstage. The new report that came out after his WWE release claims that Keith Lee was not easy to work with and had an attitude problem backstage. Of course, nothing from this article is proven true, it's just some alleged comments from supposedly backstage individuals. What makes fans a bit skeptical about this report is that this excuse is basically being used now for everyone that's released from WWE. Now we have reports that say Bray Wyatt had an attitude problem, Keith Lee had an attitude problem, and so on. So it's hard to determine if these individuals really did have an attitude problem, or if this is just false narrative that's being used to defend WWE's decision to release them and devalue them for the free agency market. It's very hard to tell because it seems like everyone that's getting released nowadays is getting labeled with an automatic attitude problem. So it's hard to take their word for it when they're saying that about nearly everyone. At least from the outside looking in, Keith Lee seemed like he was willing to do whatever it took for Vince McMahon and WWE to be happy. He switched to the Bearcat persona and followed every instruction that was said to him. So it's a hard report to trust, but that's what they're saying. WWE's traditional Survivor Series matches were announced this year in a very untraditional fashion. Instead of hyping up the event and having qualifying matches for the Team Raw and Team SmackDown, WWE announced the matches and team members on a random Saturday afternoon over Twitter. One of those superstars who called WWE out was Ricochet, who tweeted out a message asking about what happened to qualifiers. And it's a great question, and it's pretty bizarre to see a WWE superstar calling out the lack of logic here. Before, you had to fight for your right to represent your brand at Survivor Series, but now members are just being picked randomly on a Saturday afternoon? And what qualifies these members that they picked on these teams? What was the process? How were the teams decided and chosen? We don't know because they apparently didn't see any importance in telling us that information this year. There was another controversy with Natalya taking a spot on Team SmackDown, while a new talent like Toni Storm continues to sit backstage doing nothing. Fans really wanted Toni Storm to have that spot over Natalya, and they're right. It's nothing against Natalya. She's a hands-down future member of the WWE Hall of Fame. She has over 600 career wins. She's one of the greatest to ever do it, an icon. But why not put the 26-year-old Toni Storm in that spot and give her an opportunity to shine? It's all about making new stars. So it feels like Toni Storm could have made something more out of this Survivor Series platform and opportunity over a veteran like Natalya. So that is something that fans have been talking about all week long. Toni Storm was hyped up for a few weeks leading up to her debut back in July, but she hasn't done much of anything since then. It almost feels like we're still kind of waiting for her debut. Hopefully something is done there soon with Toni Storm. But what are your thoughts on today's stories? Leave your comments, don't forget to subscribe, and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys.